live. We're good there. I'm actually running the tech on my side, and I got this fancy camera, but don't let that scare you guys. We are here to talk copy. Dude, this is a great group. We got local business words. Tell me a bit about who's in here so we know when people start piling on, who we're talking to, and how we can make sure that we address their main concerns. That's the goal today. Talk to the folks in the group here, get them some copy review. We'll look at some of your copy too if you want, Wolfman, and then we'll just have a good time. Some Q's and A's always welcome as well.
Hell yeah. This group is made for local business owners to kind of like get together, share ideas, share what's working, what's not working, and see how they can, so we can all push through this crazy world, crazy climate, economic climate that we're at right now. So that's the goal, kind of going over existing assets that they have that they could leverage, because some businesses are sitting on assets, aka money. So I'm trying to see how we can extract those assets that you're sitting on, and then you can just start putting it out there so you can start making some cash, some stacks like some that stacks. Right there in your desk.
Full disclaimer, that is movie money. Obviously, I do not keep $500,000 chilling on my desk, but it is a fun visual metaphor sometimes. It's funny you mentioned that word leverage. Like one of my brands, I still am not 100% sure how they all are married, but it's called Smart Leverage, and the concept's similar to the one you were presenting there, where if you can look at what you have available in your own business right now, there's usually a lot more assets than people know, and I'm sure you, as a awesome consultant for local businesses, a lot of times they're doing their own marketing, right? But they may not even know what they have, right? Like they may not even know the value of their customer list or their past leads list, things like that. So that's huge, right? Looks like we got David 100%. On here. He's being a lurker. He's not even saying nothing. We can see you though. No, good to have you here, Dave. Anyone who's hopping on, again, we're gonna do some copy reviews, some marketing reviews, some advertising review. But I do like that concept, Oscar Wolfman, of looking at your own business. Like, what do you already have? Maybe we can talk about that for a minute, because I'd love to hear your perspective. I'll share just a minute of mine on that, because literally the other day was talking to a guy who does marketing for gyms, and they're all brick and mortar, obviously. And right now that it's a tough time. A lot of gyms, most of them are shut down or virtual or whatever, and we can talk about those situations too. But what the main thing this guy does in his agency is he goes in to gyms, local brick and mortar, and reactivates their past lists, right? So a lot of gyms, they'll have a customer base of people who quit, like a year ago, but everybody still needs a gym membership or should have one. So he just comes in, does promotions to past customers, and it's huge because they've already spent the money to get the customers. What kind of approaches have you seen working these days?
Yeah, I think that's huge. That's definitely an avenue where your own list that you've compiled over the years, that those are interested people. That's why you have them in your system, because they either bought something from you or they got something for free. Either way, they're there because they're interested in what you got. So that's low-hanging fruit, right? Like low effort, high leverage kind of thing, that you just start your communication or reactivate your communication with them in order to get them to come back to you and make some stacks in the process.
And the reason it's funny, because you already spent the money to get the lead or past customer, right? Like cost of acquisition for getting I only know this stat because it's on The Office. Do you ever watch The Office, the TV show?
Yes.
A little bit. I think we're all slightly addicted to that right now these days. And I'm sure we could verify the stat, but it's something like 2 or 3 times more expensive to get a new customer than to reactivate an old one, right? Mm-hmm. And so when you are looking for opportunities right now, especially, you have to be creative. And, in marketing, that gives you the angle to go out to the world with your creative approach. So, like the other day, I was consulting with a gal who offers like in-home organization stuff, like services, which I clearly need. This place is a wreck. But we were talking like, what could she do now with the COVID situation? There's a lot more friction with having someone come into your house.
Right.
And basically, we discussed, it's a pretty simple concept, but turn that disadvantage into the advantage, right? Like, build a campaign. Your product doesn't have to change, but your marketing does. So a little bit about her product change, because she's coming in now with, gloves and a mask on. But the angle became, we shifted to, the campaign was, you're working from home. You need your environment to be conducive to getting things done, like being productive, right?
Right.
That's why you need our service. But then it's also like the objection of, but now how can you trust that someone coming into your home is, safe, kind of thing. And then that was the campaign at the higher level. She even went back to her past leads and stuff and reactivated a lot of past customers. But the disadvantage for her of the COVID situation, we turned into an asset. We turned into a positive thing. Not necessarily that, the situation's positive, but for her, she had to switch her marketing over to this new approach, because for a lot of brick and mortars right now, everything's changed. We're fortunate enough from consulting and digital marketing standpoint, a lot of what we're doing is, consistent. For me, at least, selling a book and stuff, like, hasn't changed too much, the situation. But yeah, like, another good example, small one, and then we can jump onto some copy stuff. We try to support local businesses as we can here in San Diego. And my wife, obviously Amazon is the easy, lowest hanging fruit for buying books, right? But we love our little bookstore down the street. And through all of this, it was kind of like, we're not going to go there right now, like with the lockdown and stuff. But I saw that my wife had a bag with their name on it with some books in it. I said, "What? Are they open? Did you go down there?" She said, "Oh no, they're offering free delivery for local, right?" And so, that's a brilliant marketing strategy. They adapted to the situation where, right now, if you can't adapt to what's going on, especially in brick and mortar, if you let the anxiety of the situation take over, you're going to have a really hard time staying afloat. And looks like we got Jacques, Miss Kennedy. Pleasure to have you on here.
So Sean, how do
Yes.
you so with that in mind, with what you're just talking about, so the product doesn't change, the product remains the same, right? The messaging, the marketing message is what changes, right? You have to adapt the messaging to what's happening now. So you enter the conversation, where people are right now, but also like it's also offer restructure in a way as well.
Yeah. So, let's talk this through, because there's 100 different ways to accomplish this, but the first step, right, is to admit, if you're a local business, and I'm sure by now it's apparent to most, like, things have changed. They ideally will go back to normal, but guess what? If you can make it through this situation, you're going to be an expert in what to do if this kind of thing happens again. This hasn't happened in a very long time, but epidemics aren't terribly unique, and change is constant, right? Like, it might not be COVID that hits next, but something unknown. They call them black swans, right? Like, these events you can't really predict necessarily, like, but yeah. So if you can look at your situation and admit that, yes, it's scary. Yes, there's a lot of anxiety involved, but it is also a unique opportunity for your company to stand out and adapt. And the number of local businesses going under right now is huge. Like, it's wild. And I'm hopeful that there's a big resurgence and everybody kind of comes out of this swinging. But what can you do right now from a marketing standpoint? We've discussed like the changing the campaign, right? Look at what your business offers and try to think of ways, like the bookstore, they offered free delivery for local. That's big because they don't charge much more than Amazon for the books, right? It's just a nice, like, we like going to bookstores, so it's like an easy one. But I'm not going to risk my well-being to go to a bookstore, not with like a kid and stuff, right? So they're on their website, there's a big banner, free local shipping, and they literally, like, they have someone drive around once a day in a van and drop off bags of books, right? I'm sure it's not like a huge boom for them. I'm sure like that is a challenge. They lose a lot of foot traffic, right? But it might be enough to keep them afloat. They might be doing other things. And also they could always go back to their customer list, which they should have. Hopefully they have, right? Hopefully emailed them all every day, say free local shipping, buy one, get one. It's like, that's where marketing lives, is applying the messaging to the new strategy. So, as people hop on and off, totally fine. I know we got a few folks watching. Maybe you can share with us what your business is, if it's a local business. Maybe we can talk some specific strategies as how to approach this particular COVID situation. But Roscoe, why don't we do this, if you don't mind? This could be kind of fun. If you have, it could be either, maybe not for a client, but if you have an example of copy of your own that you want to dive into a little bit, or some ads or landing pages, that's kind of the fun I have is critiquing people's stuff, and we can pull some messaging or some lessons out of it. If you want to do that, great. If not, no problem. We can keep the conversation going on this subject. But what do you think? You want to do some copy reviews of what you got going on?
Actually, I wanted
the spot, by the way.
I know. Actually, I wanted to dive in deeper into offers, if you're okay with that. So because I've noticed that a lot of offers, and we're talking about this right now, a lot of offers are me too advertising, right? This is who I am. This is my place of business. This is my phone number, and this is my website. And there's just like, there's no differentiation there. And I had a question from actually Hamoon Green. He asked, how do you stand out in a sea of competition? And especially when you have ads or offers, or your messaging just looks the same as everyone else in your marketplace, obviously that's not going to help you. So what are things that you could do to kind of like, differentiate yourself? Right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, let's think about it, like two plumbers, right? Offer the same service. The technology, is it much different between the two? Like the differentiators often come down to price, if all things are equal, right? Like if I'm looking at I have a Linky Sync, I look at two plumbers. For me as a consumer, obviously price is interesting. Like it's a factor, but you can make a list of these factors, right? Price for local, if you're offering the same thing, if you're lower than the competition, make that your differentiator, right? Like if you want, I don't always recommend like focusing on price, but if all else is equal, that's a big differentiator. Obviously, like customer service, like these are elements in your marketing, by the way, that you can focus on. And they don't all have to be in one piece of marketing. You like think of it almost like billboard, even if it's not a billboard, it's like, what is the key point you want to get across? Come up with like 5 or 6 of these like billboard ads. Who we are, what we do, and what separates us, right? Like John's Plumber Service, we do plumbing, right? It's not that unique, but what is the unique offer that you have? Could be pricing, could be customer service, could be speed of implementation. Like what are the things in your marketing that you can stress, and if you don't have a ton of those, what can you stress about your competition that makes you look better? This works pretty well with local because online competition isn't as big a factor, I would say, as far as like, I don't care how many copywriting books are out there. I'm still going to be able to sell copywriting books, right? Like it's a different kind of deal. Whereas comparing to plumber service or to roofing services, and David, if you want to chime in, what kind of business you have, we can use that as an example too. But it did. By the way, who put this question forward, did they mention their business by chance?
He's a copywriter.
Oh, okay. He's a copywriter. How do you? Well, then that's a service-based one, right? He's not a plumber. That's okay. But it's the same concept, right? Like, could be pricing. But that the one issue with copywriting and pricing is, you're a copywriter. It's all very subjective. There's so many different factors, especially like as a freelance designer. If you change your model, though, you can make the pricing the factor. The concept of streamlining and systematizing copywriting, and charging like $450 as a flat rate per month, that's a tough challenge to do. Like, I would never charge that. But if I had a system with like 20 outsourced copywriters and they followed that system and it did pretty well, it might work, right? So the offer, we'll talk. Let's go back to brick and mortar for a second, because I want to wrap up that thought, and then let's switch over to like service-based stuff, right? Like as far as business services like copywriting. Back to the plumber example, you've got customer service, you've got pricing, you've got
speed.
You've got speed of implementation, and then you've got the competitors, right? Like you could. I love this angle in marketing in general, but like, what are the risks of not working with you specifically, right? What in my proposals, generally the last page on the proposal is something along the lines of, you can go implement this all yourself. I've given you the framework. In my proposals, it's very detailed what you should do. I even mentioned, I won't be upset if you do that. Like, go for it. But here's what's going to happen, and then I'll paint the picture of like flaky freelancers and misplaced tech and, all this stuff, like all the things that I know I've seen happen with other people who aren't me. Right. So, plumbers, for example, it works really well, right? You can, if you have like a 99.9% success rate, right, as a plumber, like, tout that, like, happy customers, 100% satisfaction guaranteed. We'll come back and fix it guaranteed. Like, those are all marketing aspects. They're business practices, right? Like, if you have 100% satisfaction guarantee, that means if you fix a leak and a day later it's leaking again, you got to go back and fix it, right? So there's extra costs, but it's a business decision, and that can tie into your marketing and become a focus of a campaign. So each campaign may have its own, or may have the same offer, right? The same call to action, but it's just different approaches to bringing the message forward. Now, if you're online, obviously you have as far as like the marketing pieces online, you have the benefit of being able to list a lot of those unique positioning pieces. But when you're talking about, and I'm sure not too many people in here are like buying billboards and whatnot and flyers, but you don't have as much real estate to work with, so you might just have to hit one point with one call to action. I'm amazed when I drive by and I see billboards that are like, terrible. Just, it's like, what are you even talking about? There's no call to action. It's just like Apple.com, big Apple, they can get away with having a billboard with just their logo, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
It's a big value statement. It's kind of a pissing contest thing, but but the last thing that you can do, as far as we'll call it just the unique positioning. Let's assume everything else is equal and competition offers similar offers that you do, right? And you have these different messages you put out there, like you're better, you're faster, all this stuff. The last thing you can do is a little more we'll call it value-based marketing. So like it's the stuff you see in like, I don't have any magazines near me, but you open up a fashion magazine, right? And you see like the attractive person wearing the awesome clothes and it's just like their logo, right? Like that's values with an S. So like what are your values as a person, right? That's values based marketing, because you're showing people something that they want about themselves. Like I wish I had the ad in front of me, but there's a wonderful ad with an older father and his son, and he's got his watch, and it's a watch ad, and the tagline is brilliant. It's like, you don't buy I forget the name of let's just say Rolex. It's not Rolex, but you don't buy a Rolex. You're just holding on to it for the next generation. I was like, oh, that's friggin' sick, right?
Yeah.
Now that with that picture and that mess, I was like, dude, there it is. Like that's a home run, because they're appealing to the values of the potential buyer, which they see themselves as the father in that picture, right? And it tells a whole story, like one sentence. It's great. Now with local, that's really tough. Yeah, go ahead.
It kind of makes the price irrelevant, right? They're not going like we're the lowest price or anything. It's like, this is like super high value.
They know, right? These watches, they're $60,000, right? They're not trying to sell on price, right? Mm-hmm. And if you are in that like higher end luxury approach, marketing's a bit more expensive, because you're appealing, you're marketing to higher end clientele. Like the luxury market, what people don't necessarily understand about it a lot of times is that there's a segment of the population that buys luxury because it's luxury. And that's really it. Like they there's plenty of other reasons, but that's the ego driven buying decision is like, oh, this is expensive and nice, I deserve that, so that's what I'm going to buy, right?
Some deep psychology there,
right? And in fact, in the book, right, in the book I have a section on, it's called ego morphing, which is like the concept of why people buy anything. A lot of times, if you're buying something outside of your initial need base, like, besides shelter and whatnot, like most of, especially in, Western civilization, where a lot of our, capital is moved around into, we're buying things to help identify ourselves, right? Whether that's right or wrong, I don't, no comment. But that's the reality. So a lot of buying is done to support and show who I am, what I believe. Like if you think of the last thing you bought and why you bought it, if you pay attention to your inner dialogue, a lot of it's subconscious, but there's a few times you'll be able to tap into it and hear like the old, oh, I deserve this, or I've worked hard, or like you'll find a way to justify it. And it's usually like a personal thing you're trying to say about yourself. Mm-hmm. Someone who buys a very nice watch, they're going to tell you the story of, it's Swiss made and it's the best mechanics and these guys, they'll tell you that story. But guess what? They're not buying that watch to go admire it and put it on a shelf and leave it in a dark closet or something. They're buying it to go out and show the world who they are. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And the same goes for if you buy a cheap watch, right? You may have bought it because logically you said, I just want to know the time. Like you're buying it for the function, right? But deep down, you're buying it. What you're doing is you're supporting the value. And you may even tell people, I got a great deal on this watch, right? I do that all the time. I'm guilty of that. I'm like, I got this killer deal like on this thing. And I talk about it. And then I realize like, I value that about myself, that I'm good at finding good deals. And it's like part of who I am. And it's part of the buying decision, right? Maybe, and it's how we justify purchases. So what you can do as a local business, if you're talking like higher level advertising, this is often done more in imagery than anything else, but project the emotional and visual situation that you want your customer to be in before and after. If you can't do before, just do after. The easiest example to look at is the stupid pharmaceutical ads. The reason they're set up the way they are is because they work. They're showing the before and after in 30 seconds. You had back pain before, you don't now, so you're running in the field with your grandkids. Like, it's pretty silly stuff, but it works. There's no doubt about it. With any local business, look at what you're selling, look what it provides, and visually represent that to the world. Go back to our plumber example, right? You don't. I see so many ads for plumbers, and it's like a guy with a wrench, or like it's like, great. I don't care who you are. I care what you do for me, right? That's what your subconscious says. So when if I were to put together a plumbing ad, it would probably be like 2 images, one with a completely flooded basement and one with a beautiful basement, and you could go 2 angles on that. Like they're on the same board, right? They're on the same ad, whatever it is, online off. And you could either go the prevent this angle, get a free diagnostic on your plumbing today, stop 100,000, the average basement flood is 300,000, whatever it is, in damage. Get your free diagnostic today to make sure your plumbing's up to snuff. 22% of homeowners don't know that they're 6 months away from a giant leak that would ruin their basement, whatever the stat is, right? Mm-hmm. Or it's, that's ad A. Ad B, same imagery. It's along the lines of, if you're in a mess, we can get you out of it, kind of thing. Like this, you're not selling prevention, you're selling cure. Mm-hmm. I think those 2 angles are very powerful in advertising. So looks like we got a few folks popping in too. Again, just good to have everyone in here. If you're just hopping on, what we will be doing is a bit of copy critiquing. We're talking about advertising now in local biz. We've been talking a bit about the COVID situation, how local businesses can pivot in that situation. Wolfman here has been posing some good questions. So Wolfman, what other questions we got?
I just wanted to say that people saying in marketing, you're not selling the drill, right? You're selling the hole that the drill is going to get that end consumer. Yeah. Right. You're selling the future of what that product means for them in their life. Mm-hmm. If everything goes right, this is where you will be. So sell that instead of selling just the product, the features.
What's the saying? Sell the sizzle, not the steak, kind of deal, right?
Right. Yeah.
You need both, right? Like, it's so funny because people underestimate how valuable well-positioned features are too, right? You should know your features inside and out, and there's hidden features that you don't anticipate a lot of times as a seller. You're like, well, people should know this already they should know this feature, right. But chances are they don't. And I would rather list too many features than not enough. And then you build on those features. Like, what's the benefit of the feature? Like a drills a hole, right? That's the benefit, is the hole. You got a hole and you didn't have to do it by hand. That's great. But what's the benefit of that benefit, right? That's really the key kind of headline builder there. And it's what will drive your imagery. It's what will have, like, you'll have fun with the ads. It's like, if you want to do an ad for a drill, you show a finished porch, or like, depending on who your audience is, right? Like who you're targeting, you might show a tree house. Like if you want to target, family people, like you want to show the end result, the benefit of the benefit. So many ads these days just stop at the benefit. Like, we drill a hole better than anybody else out there, right? And like, that's not where it start. That's where it might stop for a professional audience, right? You can still keep going. You should keep going. Like, the features are important. Like, we'll use the watch for example. $60,000 watch, whatever it is, 20,000. The emotional aspect, that's really the driver of the sale. But the supporting part of it will be like, it's not a piece of crap. Like you could make a Rolex for probably a couple $100 in parts, but they're really good freaking parts, right? And it's really meticulously manufactured. Whatever. I don't know much about Rolexes, but but those are things worth mentioning. And whatever you're selling in your business, listing out those features, the benefits of those features, and the benefit of those benefits, you're only going to increase the desire in the person who's buying.
And it's kind of twofold, right? It's like a logical. You're making sure the logical part of the brain is taken care of, also the emotional part, right? Because like you justify your buying decisions with your logic.
Yeah,
so
well, and it's so true. Yeah, and the order, the order in which you present those, the logic versus the emotional, I think that's a very much of a, like, art versus science situation. I'm always impressed when I see, like, because you could do it either way, right? You could start with the emotional and transition into the logical, and then maybe cut back to the emotional. You could start with the logical, transition into the emotional, or you can try to do both at the same time. There's some really good ad examples of both happening. But I don't think there's any like perfect answer to that. Your audience is going to determine that a lot. I think, like, if your audience is more analytical in general, then you might start with the logic and transition to emotion. If they're more emotional in general, you might start with emotion, transition to logic. But you need both, like you said, right? If you're missing, and the emotional, by the way, I'm sure you'll agree with this, Oscar. Like, it doesn't have to be over the top. It just needs to be, it needs to hit home. That's maybe a good metaphor. Like, it needs to feel right. If you go overboard, like, sometimes that can be super disenchanting. Right. You'd be like a lawyer or a homeowner's something, like, you could go overboard and be like, you don't want your family to die, do you? Right? Like, that's a bit much. You wouldn't want to say that. It's an emotional thing, but you're going to trigger some seriously rough reactions to that, which might be a good thing for the ad. Who knows? So yeah, back to your point, like, got to have both. But the order, to me, it's pretty subjective.
That also comes with how would you say, when it comes to picking the right audience, right? Because you don't have, if you really want to drive that home, whether it's emotional logic or, your ad has to be talking to someone specific so it can make that connection. But you're also talking to not just one person, you're talking to many people that are going to read your ad. So how would you choose who you talk to if you have a brick and mortar business or home-based entrepreneur?
Sure, of course, there's a lot of overlap. There's a lot of misplaced audience. So you're really on the ad and the tech side, or the like technology side. There's only so much you can do. Obviously, search ads, it's like people are searching for a specific thing. That's like really low hanging fruit, by the way. Anybody who's not doing search ads for a local business, silly, right? Like, target your zip code, your keywords. It's expensive, but it's super targeted, right? Like, it's search ad versus, like, Facebook ads is like shooting a shotgun at a flock of birds and hoping you hit one, right? You're not going to hit as many birds, but it's going to be more focused. Gosh, there's got to be a better, less dramatic metaphor for that.
I like it.
It works, right? Gets the point across, but at the same time. So yeah,
not the killing birds part, but yes, I like it.
Right, the clay pigeons. There we go. So with search, it's an easy one. Like, people are searching for you, give it to them. Make it easy for them to buy. Make it an easy decision. With Facebook ads, selecting your audience, you have to do so a bit more in the copy itself, right? So you may target a big section, segment, but like literally sometimes it'll just be like, are you a copywriter? Like, are you running Facebook ads? It's in Facebook
you are niching down.
Yeah, you're niching down, but you're doing so in the audience, in the text of the ad, on a good way. And by the way, like, every ad doesn't have to be super niche. Like, I like broad ads. Like, my target audience is entrepreneurs for my book. So the way I approached that was I didn't thesis of the ad, right? Because it's a pretty broad audience. There's a lot of entrepreneurs or people who consider themselves entrepreneurs or want to be entrepreneurs, right? So in the ads, I will like that was why that campaign's, it's called the number one entrepreneurial, like, because copywriters are going to find the book eventually, probably, right? Like, and a lot of times it makes its circles, right? But I want to go after that broad audience. Now, more specifically to like brick and mortar and stuff. One nice thing is obviously if you're doing zip code based, like if you're selling to just people in your county or whatever, your city, that gets pretty easy to get down to that level. All right. Then obviously you can do interest based. There's a lot of different. Facebook's pretty friggin' smart. So it's almost feels like a search ad at that point if you get it niched down enough. But in the copy itself, try to call out the audience, and you can have the same ad for different audiences and just change who you're calling out, because what you want to have happen is people see the ad, see that it's relevant to them, and then give it a look, right? Like that's the important part. If they never pay attention, they don't feel it's relevant, and they're not going to do that.
And one thing that you said right now I found very interesting is that you don't niche out in terms of people or industry, like reading the ad and buying your product, because it's this the problem that it's not just industry or an entrepreneur or copyright. It's just the problem is all of the entrepreneurs that you are looking for is what they're facing.
Right. Exactly. Well, and for local businesses, try to think of the highest level. The highest level is human. All humans need this, and here's why, right? Like that's consumer products in general. Like you need toothpaste. So it's like at that level, that's what, celebrity marketing is interesting. I was curious, like, does that stuff even make a difference? But at the highest level of selling to just humanity, when all things are equal, Colgate versus what's the other one? Crest, right? Like the differentiating factor at that level a lot of times comes down to endorsement, and that's why celebrity stuff works, and influence marketing is big for that. You can even, as a local company, you can tap into that. But on the ad side, you don't need to go get a celebrity endorsement, by the way. I guess it couldn't hurt, but probably not a good ROI if you don't have the need for it. But yeah, on the local level, like try to envision who under that human level, what's the next level? Is it what's the big buckets, right? Is it entrepreneurs? Is it small business owners? Is it new business owners? Is it established business owners? Is it parents? Is it single parents? Like you can get to these kind of like pillars of individuals. It's not necessarily a demographic as much. Like I don't necessarily like to do demographic based marketing. Like I don't just market to women or men. I don't change my messaging for men or women or race or any of that stuff, because like if you can tap into universal problems, then it doesn't matter like necessarily your demographic doesn't matter at all at that point. We all have the same problems. Like at that level, there's going to be unique approaches at those different demographics. Something that fixes a problem for a man may not work for a woman. I can't think of specific examples. That's probably good, but in general, like the general solution has similar attributes. So and you can make ads for those different segments as well. By the way, you can like keep going down the ladder. Like small business owners might be your target audience. New business owners might be, but what type of businesses, right? Like for me, then I start niching down into, advertisers, copywriters, could even do like real estate agents. Right? They need to do their copy too. Like small business or local business owners is a good niche, right? So the concept here is identify the buckets that people fall into, and then make your messaging reflect speaking to those buckets. At the higher level, you can always niche down, but it's much better to start at a little broader, because you have a lot more information to work with. You can send a lot more traffic, and it's a bit more expensive, but long term you get so much more data on your pixel. You get so much more of the technical stuff that helps ads, right? And then the visual, by the way, is huge. Like test has been like copy is big, but on ads, display ads particularly, I've just found the
And you got
buckets of people, for lack of a better term.
all right. Wow. Yeah. And you mentioned celebrity endorsements and stuff like that, but there are ways for a local business, and this is another asset that they might be sitting on, is your relationships with non-competing businesses who are sharing your same clientele, right? You can have endorsements, deals like that, or strategic
cross
partnerships,
promotions,
and all that.
I have to do ads. Sometimes ads aren't the answer. Depending, I always tell people, like, whatever your price point is going to determine your marketing a lot of times. If you sell a Lamborghini, your Facebook ads are not, the conversion pixel is not going to fire, right? Like no one's going to go to the website, do a checkout for $300,000, and that's how they buy a Lamborghini. Now you can obviously run ads to build interest, but my approach, like I was talking to somebody who literally had this issue. They're like, we're running a ton of ads, but we're really not. It's like a lot of people like love the cars and they'll call just to talk about the cars, but we're not making any sales. I'm like, well, dude, the people who buy Lamborghinis, they're not chilling on Facebook, like they might be there, and you could do it. You could build a campaign out that nurtures and all this stuff. Like, wealthy retired people, like you should own a Lamborghini. Like you could do that. That's what Lamborghini as a brand does, by the way. Like they want to build the brand. But if you're a dealer, there's much smarter approaches than just like throwing out thousands of dollars of Facebook ads every week, right? You could put together like a small event and invite local business owners, like high-end business owners, send them special invite, blah, blah. Like you could do different type of marketing. All the same principles apply, right? Like I was suggesting that what they do is get a courier to send the invite in a nice like box and like, with a special key, and you're going to do a raffle at the event. Like it's expensive, but the point is you're selling $300,000 cars. Your cost per acquisition might be $20,000 or $30,000, right? And ideally, yes, of course, someone knows about a Lamborghini, just walks in and buys it. It's perfect. That's why Lamborghini runs ads. But if you wanted to increase sales, you need to do something different. You running ads is great, and you should retarget, and you could, you could go ham and really run a lot of ads. But the point is different approaches for different price points. And I love the idea, like for local businesses to start cross-populating. Being smart and checking with a lawyer, by the way, is smart to make sure all the dots and T's are good with that kind of stuff, because I know in certain industries there's like weird parameters, like a financial planner endorsing a low, it's like there's some weird stuff there local businesses have to be conscious of. But for instance, if you had a car dealership and you wanted to do a deal with a car wash, not because they're just both related to cars, but like the car wash might have a giant list of people who they care about their cars because they're washing them, right? They could send out a mailer, an email or something with a discount for the dealership, and vice versa. Like in exchange for that, you could give away a month free of your dealership. Anybody buys a new car gets a free Mike's Car Wash membership, and with a chance to, it's like those are deals that you can get creative with, and I love that. I love that concept. Good, that's a good one, Wolfman. I like it.
Actually, David Rosa asked a question saying, how can you, this relates to education-driven marketing. So he said, how can you help local businesses with information products to drive education-based decisions to become the dominant player in the marketplace? So
read that back to me one more time. I want to make sure I got that right.
How can local businesses use information products to drive education-based decisions so that they can become a dominant player in the marketplace?
Smart question. So we'll look at this two ways, because he mentions info products, and or
even information marketing, right?
Education but content marketing, right? So, so I want to stay away from info products is what I'm trying to say. But education-based like selling, okay, is kind of I guess the core question here. How can you leverage content? To me, there's the highest level answer to that is, again, it's going to depend on your price point. The higher the price, the more educated the buyer needs to be to make a informed buying decision. Mm-hmm. So, like, for instance, like a $2,000, I'll just speak about online products for a minute, as selling a $2,000 course, but the way that it's presented and the way it's digested is going to be slightly different. Like, that's why webinars are very prevalent in the higher, like, I don't have a webinar for my book, because I don't think somebody needs to sit down for an hour and learn all of its intricacies to make a decent buying decision on $37. The risk is low, right? So what's the risk to the buyer? The higher the risk. In fact, that might be more important than the price point, because like Rolex, for instance, they don't have a big information machine selling Rolexes, right? Like, their target audience, they need to win them over on the luxury angle. And to do that successfully, they're educating them about the values of it. That's what those ads are about. And then their target audience generally is not too worried about dropping $10,000, $20,000, $30,000, right? They don't need to be persuaded terribly. But if you're like a local business and you sell like a consulting service of some kind, educating the person is a critical piece of the puzzle. And I know a lot of brick and mortar people sell services, right? And sorry, my audio's,
I think,
being kind of junky, but
I think, for example, Joe Polish, he works with carpet cleaners, right? And he has this flyer that's education based. The 7 things you must ask carpet cleaners before you hire them, or something like that. So now they had no idea of things like, are they whatever it is with carpets, but they had no idea before. And now that they read the flyer, they're like, oh, now I should look out for X, Y, and Z before I hire someone.
Yeah. So what's the principle there, right? The goal is to build trust, right? That trust factor, because you're educating them. The best way to build trust is to teach somebody something. Like, it's kind of like that billboard we talked about earlier for the plumber. It's like, whatever the statistic I made up, like, 20% of homeowners are 6 months away from a critical leak in their basement, or whatever it is. Like, that's an educational statement that informs somebody. So, like, a practical way to do that for local businesses, first become familiar with, there's a concept called the curse of knowledge. Have you ever heard of this concept? Okay, so it's pretty simple. It's like, the better you get at something, the less you can, the harder it is to relate to people who don't understand it, like why they don't understand it. So, something that you take for granted as a feature or benefit to your offer might be something brand new to someone else. Like those 7 things you should ask. That, by the way, is a brilliant frame. Every service industry person could leverage that. But the idea there that what am I trying to say here?
The consumer might not be aware of it.
Yeah, well, yeah, and so you might not be aware that it's important too, right? So what I tend to try to do is list out as many problems as I can, and find statistics that are unique and interesting and give good insights. Because what you're really doing is you're giving insights, which is different from knowledge, right? Like, knowledge is, here's 7 things that carpet cleaners do. That's knowledge, right? An insight is, here's 7 things you should ask to avoid XYZ problem when hiring a carpet cleaner. There's a subtle difference, but knowledge is Wikipedia stuff, and understanding / insights is teaching somebody something new or a different perspective on it. And it's a subtle difference, but it's huge. It makes or breaks the ad a lot of times. For instance, on the sales page for my book, The insight I try to get across is that the reason you're not getting sales isn't necessarily because your product is bad or your service or your offer is bad, is that you're just not positioning right. You're not bringing the message forward correctly. So that's my claim, right? That the insight I try to deliver is that copywriting is the solution, right? So love that angle. I think that's smart, to answer his question. Like, depending on what you're selling, it's going to determine the depth you need to go. Selling a hand drill, a lot more about feature and benefits than education. That's subjective, I guess. It depends on the type of drill and who you're selling it to. But yeah, in short, yes, education content marketing works. It can be tied directly into the ad itself, and it should call attention to something that is a unique, novel perspective that the audience didn't have, or a misconception they have.
That in itself, it's a differentiator, because chances are other businesses are not doing that at all.
Right. Absolutely.
Right? And I think that there was a story, I think every copywriter knows about Club Hopkins going into the Schultz beer and asking the beer, how is it different than everyone else? And it's like, no, it's the same. There's no differentiation. And then Club Hopkins just described the whole process and how they get beer to taste better, which is the same as everyone else, but no one was, expressing the whole process. So they differentiated themselves, and they got to second place in United States or something just by doing that.
That's so true. It's funny because a lot of business owners underestimate how good they are at marketing in general because they haven't had it pulled out of them yet. So like the first thing I generally do when I meet somebody, because most entrepreneurs are like so fixated on the product. And that's a good thing. Like the product is important in the offer, like service, whatever. But when you do that, when you're so fixated on it, it's hard sometimes to see it from the outside perspective. So like, for instance, I was at a mastermind workout, and, I basically, like, the mastermind was about like building better marketing. And I asked them, like, describe it to me. Like, is this just another ab workout? Like, tell me what's unique about it. He went on this amazing rant, right, where he just basically, he laid out, like, he's like, well, the problem with most machines that are similar to this, they have this issue. And what we have done is, through blah, blah. And he gave this like amazing, just off the cuff pitch. And I basically said, like, period, there's your ad. Like, you don't, because we looked at his ads and it was just describing like what it does. Right. But it is funny, like asking yourself like questions about your product and then digging into why that's the case is a great way to develop marketing copy, by the way. I'll do that with clients generally, just interview them, record it. And that's a lot of times the sales page. Yeah.
100%. Let me ask you a question from, from Lindsay Kramer. She asked, what are common mistakes small businesses make, and on the flip side, the marketers make, and how we can avoid them? And then she asked about tools that we should be aware of and tools that we shouldn't bother with.
Yeah. Well, so to the first question, like, let's talk about, because it's two different breeds, right? Like marketers who do marketing for companies make different mistakes than businesses that do marketing for themselves. Businesses that do marketing for themselves, we've talked about a few of the common issues, right? Which is like focusing too much on yourself and not the customer in the messaging. That's a big one. It's like, your mission statement is important only after I understand what's in it for me. So you'll notice, like on my sales page for the book, I don't talk about myself till the bottom of the page, because I could build authority, blah, blah, but the concepts should sell the book on their own. That page converts very well. So you should have your like about us section, but it should be in context of the reader. How is what we're doing going to help you? We've been established for 50 years. Why does that matter to them? Like, that should always be the following statement that you provide after you talk about yourself. we did this so that you can have this. We've been here so that you can get there. Like, you know, it's a balancing act. Because that's the biggest thing in marketing. If you can comprehend that, or if you can get that drilled in your brain, that very little of it, the consumer cares little for you and what you do unless they understand what's in it for them. And if they understand what's in it for them, then they're going to be interested in you and what you're doing, right? So start with them first. There's caveats to that, but you know, for the most part, that's the general principle. Same applies to agencies though. Like marketers who are doing this stuff, never forget that if your marketing isn't working well, that's probably why. It's because you focus too much on the product or the brand and not enough on the buyer. So that'd be my like core piece of advice, I guess.
Nice. And Mohit Kumar asked if you have an advice on how to do research and how to write copy fast.
Fast. Become
fast,
faster.
The keyword.
Yeah, become a faster reader. It's probably the answer, right? So, you know, there's a really good article I once read about writer's block, and the argument this guy made was that there's no such thing as writer's block. It's only that you haven't put enough time into research and learning about the subject. Because the goal with the research, and it's not to learn everything there is to know. The first goal is ultimately to get to an insight. What is a unique approach, kind of like that, the 7 things that, you know, you should ask before you hire a steam cleaner. You got to do quite a bit of research, and you can dig internally, of course, if you're running your own marketing, your own business. Like, you need to interview your customers. Like, that's a good research aspect. Like, a lot of times they buy for reasons you didn't anticipate, right? Like, that is research as well. And so for me, it's such a critical thing to get the messaging right that I don't really put a time limit on research. I research until I find it, right? I'm searching for that insight. Sometimes it's like 30 minutes and you're like, there it is, I got it. And you might do a bit more research to support your argument and blah, blah, blah. Or if it's a new type project, you never do it, you might have to get very familiar with it. And that's really what separates like really good at, you know, marketing providers from the best, or from the average. Is the amount of time they put in. And it's why they're more expensive, but it's because they get better results. So as far as writing faster, you will write a lot faster if you spend more time researching, right? So I'm generally about 70%. If you were looking at time involved in a piece of content, it's like 70% research development now, 30% writing and revising. That's going to shift based on what we discussed, but also like practice, right? Anytime I take a bit of time off writing, you know how it is, man. Like when you come back to it, you're like, it's not like getting back on a bike. It's like, you have to kind of relearn a lot of the basic stuff again. And you're like, man, you know, in my book, I try to outline a bunch of different methodologies. Well, that's the goal of it, right? That I personally use to make things go a little faster. But in general, there's templates, there's shortcuts, but at the end of the day, you still have to put in the work of understanding the offer. If you don't understand it, you can't teach it. And if you can't teach it, you can't sell it, right? The best salespeople in the world are teachers. So yeah, the shorter answer is you can go faster if you research more. The long answer is keep practicing. That was the short answer too, but hope that answers that one.
Yeah, that's great, man. Awesome. How will you demystify advertising to a person that thinks, you know, it's a little scary to put money on ads, you know, that's actually, you know, they run on word of mouth, let's say, or just, you know, just traditional stuff. And it's not scary once you can replicate, systematize your advertising, right?
Yeah, it's that first jump in the water that shocks you a little bit. Um, you know, we'll talk in terms of local businesses running their own ads. Start with search advertising because it's lower hanging fruit. Like it's gonna, in worst case scenario, ideally, if you have decent marketing content on your page and you've made sales off your website before, you'll break even. That's the ideally the worst case scenario, right? The the like we talked about earlier, the problem with Facebook ads and stuff is it is more of an advertising of it's almost like recruitment, right? It's inbound marketing, so it's not, you don't know for sure these people are searching for this, so you have to convince them that they are searching for it and they need it. So that's different than people who know they need it, and all you have to do is convince them that you're the option, right? So that's a different campaign. The moment you start understanding that and seeing it as recruitment versus justifying, you start changing your messaging to reflect that. Like we've run over quite a few examples in here of how to do that. But that is the key, in my opinion, principally, is understand the difference between those types of ads, understand the difference between those types of approaches, because you're only like anxious about ads because you don't understand them, which is totally understandable. Like I'm anxious about stuff I don't understand too. We all are. So the best approach too, like if you're not like really into advertising marketing, you get it, but it's not like your jam and you're not going to sit on Facebook ads all day time. Like as entrepreneurs that buy my book and don't want to do copywriting, I'm like, great, don't do copywriting, but you should understand it. You should understand the principles, right? So that you can hire a good copywriter. If you don't know what good copy looks like, you may not be able to write it, then that's okay. But if you read something, you're like, I don't know if this is good or bad. It could be amazing. It could be $1 billion ad, and it could to you look like a terrible ad, or it could read great to you and it doesn't convert, right? So you have to be able to identify some of those things so that if you are hiring somebody to do it, you can look at their work and their results and make a good judgment and hire them. Because honestly, I don't run the technical side of my ads. I outsource. I found a good partner for that because it's not my strong suit. I write the ads. This guy takes it and makes it work on Facebook, right? As far as like targeting and stuff. So, know your strengths. Don't try to do it all. If you're running a business and doing all the advertising yourself, that's a job, right? So don't be afraid but you need to become familiar with it. The backbone of every business is marketing. There's no doubt about that, because it's what brings customers in. So yeah, I understand the anxiety, and getting familiar with it is the key, and then hiring people is the smarter approach. If you're shoestringing it, trying to save some money, do it yourself, you might get really good at it, and that's a good thing. But it takes a fairly savvy person on the tech side to get Facebook ads, working all the time. Not to say it's not possible. It's just it is a challenge for sure.
Sean, I think we're on the hour. I don't know if I'm sure you're busy, but let me ask you one question that Mohit asked. It's your productivity hacks, if you have any.
Sure, productivity hacks. And Troy, good to see you, man. We got Wolfman in here. Troy says, "Yo, Sean and Wolfman." So productivity is interesting because I firmly believe you should have a schedule. I don't always stick to one. I firmly believe you should have a task list. I don't always have one. All these things, like the traditional, like just, basic stuff is very important. I have found like the biggest thing that's helped me as far as productivity, because I have like ADHD. I don't try to use it as a crutch, but focus is not my expertise. What I do try to do is do block scheduling. And basically what that means is instead of having a big task list, I have sets of time, like 2 hours, I'm going to work on this one thing. I may not list out all the things I'm going to do for it, but I'm like, work on sales page for 2 hours. That at least gives me a direction, set amount of time. And then I use a timer and I do nothing but that one thing during that timer. I might have 2 or 3 blocks a day of that kind of stuff. That helps me a lot. And then just realizing that like, there's going to be times where you are, it's not even a mood thing or a situation. It's just, you're not going to be productive. So what are you going to do instead? If you're not in a productive mode, you're not, it's like whatever the situation is, what do you do? A way to be productive when you're not productive is take away dopamine generating things for at least 20 minutes. Like turn your phone off, turn your computer off, and just sit there. This is weird technique. Anybody who's like hyper involved with social media and everything you do, like, you're just getting constant dopamine pushes and you're not being productive because you're like, everything else sounds super boring except like just bouncing around on social media or something, or watching YouTube, or, you know, watching porn, whatever it is. Like there's stuff that will like give you a dopamine rush and it'll keep you from being productive. So if you cut everything off 20 minutes, go like you can go for a walk. Like a lot of times what I'll do is like, I'll find myself in this funk where I'm like, man, I just don't want to do anything. So I'll sit there. It's like you have to have enough self-discipline to turn everything off. That's the first step. If you can't do that, you're in trouble. Because it's going to suck. That 10, 20 minutes is going to suck. It's because your body just wants, all it wants is dopamine. It wants what you were doing before. I find 20 minutes is enough for me to get to the point where I'm like, anything is better than this. And a lot of times that's all I need to start writing or start the first step in a video or like whatever it is on my task list that I'm pushing off. You just need a little bit of reset. Sometimes you got to do that for a whole day. But yeah, that's another productivity. They call it a dopamine detox. If you look on YouTube, there's plenty of videos on it, but that helps me a lot because I am hyper plugged in to everything that's going on. A lot of distractions. But yeah, that's a big one too.
If anything, use that for your ads, you know, like dopamine, right? While you're reading the ad, you're like, oh yeah, I want that.
Right. Yeah. You need to tap into that. That's visually, my book does that a lot. Like that's why that ad is gone for so long. But yeah, we do. I think it's probably a good point to wrap it up. I do have a call in about 20 I want to get prepped for. But dude, this has been awesome. And I know we've had people kind of jumping in and out. If anyone wants to connect with me, you can pop on Facebook, drop a follow on there. I try to do the whole content marketing thing myself. Generally post about marketing or my corgi, you know, one of the two. But dude, this has been a blast. And I didn't know your name was the Wolfman, but that's your name now. So that's what I'm calling you from now on.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for being here. This has been great. I have so much fun. And not only that, you know, just drop value bombs all over the place. So I really appreciate it, man. Thanks a lot.
Right back at you. All right, everybody. Well, Rasco, what is it? Roscoe or Rasco?
Raxo.
Okay. Raxo, Wolfman, Oscar, all three of you.
No. Sean, people do want to get your book. Where can they go? You keep talking about. Well,
look at that. Look at that segue to an offer. No, there is a link, and I'll just pop it in here. We've got discount going for the group here. Yes. Anybody wants to pick it up, it's just sean.co/LBW, local business warrior. So that is where they can pick it up. You know, it's not for everybody. It's mainly designed for entrepreneurs who do want to understand the marketing side, but it's a labor of love. It's still going on. It's right now in a digital form. Been in on 400 pages, so a lot of good stuff to reference. So
yeah, if advertising is a little scary for you, and you need ads to get more business coming your way, and it's a little scary, if you get Sean's book, it will make it way easier when it comes to, you know, framing your ads and, you know, what to say in the ads and how to connect emotionally and empathy and all of that. It's on Sean's book, so get it.
Love it, brother. Yeah. All right. Yeah. We'll do this again soon. And everybody else in the group, appreciate you. And we'll talk soon.
Take care. Thank you, Sean.